The NFL draft is in the books. So we are here at Establish the Run, Establish the Edge simulcast episode, bringing you a Dynasty Superflex rookie mock draft. And I've got two of the best brains in the business to join me with this. Two guys that absolutely crushed draft props from Establish the Run, Anthony Amico and Evan Silva. Silva, how pumped were you to get that 40-1 pick right out of the gate?
Oh, baby. I mean, that was the first four picks. I mean, it was just like a print fest for us because we got the Sauce Gardner at number 4 as well, and that Exacto to begin the draft. And the rest of the draft was pretty. I wish we would have hit one more bomb. Actually, we did get something. I know Amico was on Malik Willis to the Titans. We got that on day 2, but I wish we just would have got like the Jameson Williams top 5, but it was a highly profitable year for NFL draft props, and I'm excited to get into some dynasty content with you guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting set of drafts in your Superflex tight end premium. That's the format that we're going to go today. Amico, let's get right into it. Kick it off with the first overall pick. We'll throw it to you. Silva will have the second pick, and I will have the third pick.
Yeah, up top, I think pretty straightforward for me. I'm going to go Drake London, number 8 pick in the draft. Ends up in a great situation in Atlanta. We would expect him to command a pretty high target share. It's really only Kyle Pitts that he has to compete with. We love receivers, obviously, in Dynasty. And, I'm working on the rankings now. I think London's going to come in with a pretty high overall for us at the receiver position.
Silva, I'll throw it to you at second. I think we're all pretty much on board with London first overall.
Yeah, and I'm going to go right to Breece Hall, who I would consider even as at the 1.01, but I would lean toward Drake London. But Breece Hall, the way that the Jets valued him, I mean, they even considered trading back into the end of the first round. They would have wound up with 4 first-round picks, but they wound up trading up for him, leapfrogging the Texans near the top of round 2. Really good athlete, great production, 82 receptions in college. Michael Carter is a fine player. He was a 4th-round pick last year. He's going to be a fine number 2 complement to Breece Hall, but Breece Hall is going to be the bell cow back for a Jets offense that I think the arrow is pointing up on.
Okay, yeah, no dispute for me in the first 2 overall picks. Third pick, I'm going to go a little high risk, high reward here and go with Treylon Burks. Someone Amico had at our established run rankings a little bit higher than the market heading into the draft. There were other wide receivers drafted ahead of him, but the tight ends ship out A.J. Brown. They make room for Burks, who should see a huge target share out of the gate. If you're thinking about dynasty value 1 year from now, it's unlikely Burks is going to have a really bad fantasy season that's going to hurt his dynasty stock just because he can get fed volume. Really big receiver. And, some people said he was slow, but pound for pound, when you adjust the 40 he ran for his size, it was pretty good. Amico's comp ranks for him are all over the place, like a bunch of duds and like James Hardy, JJ Atharga, Whiteside, N'Keal Harry, but then some massive hits and guys like Mike Evans, AJ Brown, Julio Jones, AJ Green. So give me the ceiling here on Treylon Burks.
I love it. I was there for a brief moment. I thought he'd get back to me, but we'll just continue to pivot at receiver. I mean, I just can't get enough of these top 10 wide receivers. So I'll take Garrett Wilson with the Jets. The Jets are really starting to look like a potentially fun offense, fantasy friendly offense. It really just comes down to how well Zach Wilson can play. But we know that Garrett Wilson's a great fit for this scheme. Great run after the catch ability. Reminds some people of maybe even Odell Beckham. So I think that the ceiling here is pretty high. We'll see what Wilson can do in New York. But I think, inside the top 4, top 5 in rookie drafts is a reasonable range.
And I'm going to go right to Jameson Williams. I think that if there was a lot of people talked before the draft that were no true number 1 alpha receivers in this draft. I think that Jameson Williams can absolutely be one. He was a dominant player in the SEC. He showed return ability, which, the RotoViz guys have through the years highlighted as a positive characteristic when it comes to transitioning from college to the pros at the wide receiver position. Just, so many high-end receivers in the NFL were studs in the return game. Jameson Williams had that. He had two kickoff returns for touchdowns this past year. Scored 17 touchdowns in 15 games. I think that he can be the alpha. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think he's a limited slot receiver who thrived really on volume last year. And I think that Jameson Williams can be the number one playing indoors at Ford Field in Detroit. He's going to make a lot of highlight reel plays.
Yeah, so far the board has gone exactly the way I have it in this mock draft. I'm going to stick at wide receiver, go Chris Olave out of Ohio State. He went 11th overall to the Saints. I think it's a pretty good landing spot. He's got, obviously Michael Thomas there, but there's not a whole bunch of depth in terms of targets for him to compete at wide receiver and tight end there. And I know there's a big red flag in that he wasn't an early declare, but he had a pretty strong breakout age, decent prospect profile. And yeah, he's someone I could see the delta on his ADP being pretty wide, where some people might take him as early as like third receiver, and some people might take him even later than this, but I'll take him 6th overall.
Yeah, I like it. And I think that this is the time where we're going to move over to quarterback in the Superflex drafts with Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett is by no means like a high ceiling or highly attractive prospect, right? He's older. He does not have a ton of rushing ability. He's not someone that we think probably has potential to crack into like that top 6 or top 8 in any given year. But the thing that Kenny Pickett will bring is stability. He goes to the Steelers, one of the most stable organizations in all of football. They always have tons of receiver talent. They drafted 2 more receivers in this draft. They have Pat Freiermuth. So just a lot of continuity, a lot of like high floor value here with Pickett. And we know that in these Superflex drafts, like in these leagues, you need to get these quarterbacks. Like you don't want to get locked out at the quarterback position. Pickett is definitely someone that you can have and hold on your roster and provide that value for a while.
Yeah, Amico just cannot get his mind wrapped around Jahan Dotson at all. Amico hates Jahan Dotson. And I get it. I mean, I understand exactly where he's coming from, but Jahan Dotson, the draft capital was really strong for him. 16th overall. There's a lot of opportunity in Washington. Terry McLaurin is definitely going to get his, but Jahan Dotson, I think, is going to step right in and run higher percentage routes. And I think he can catch a ton of balls right off the bat and be a long-term dynasty asset. Maybe not a high ceiling, but I think like an every week wide receiver too. That's in his crosshairs.
Okay, so Silva with the worst pick so far in the draft. We got that out of the way. No, but Dotson, I mean, the wide receiver draft capital, like we let Kadarius Toney in a lot of our leagues fall to like late 2nd round because we hated him as a prospect last year. And,
well, that's looking kind of good right now, isn't it?
I mean, if you have Toney, you had a huge profit, at the late 2nd round, even if he gets traded or, whatever's happening with him. Like he was much better than we expected him to be, trade rumors aside. And
he had like 1.5 good games.
Well, listen, he only played like 3. So
I'm trying to defend you here, Silva, by giving you the draft cap. I mean, Dotson goes 16th overall. Like of all the remaining players, no one's really close in terms of his draft capital. And sometimes we overthink things. We think we're smarter than the NFL. We're not necessarily. So I do see the Dotson reason. I do have him a little bit lower. I'm gonna go different wide receiver. We're playing whack-a-mole here with there's a running back on the board that no one seems to want to take that is going to go a lot earlier, I think, in the market. But I'm going to go Sky Moore, kind of the analytics darling. He's, a smaller wide receiver, but he goes to, the absolute nut landing spot. I think this is a pretty good outcome for Sky Moore. He gets round 2 draft capital, goes to Kansas City Chiefs. You've got elite offense and you've got opportunity for him. So I like him a lot here. I feel pretty good about him actually here. And then I think things start to get a little shaky for me as far as where to go next.
Yeah, I'm going back to running back, and I'm going to pivot a little bit here from where I think maybe the market would go, and I'm going to go with James Cook.
Oh, wow.
I like Kenneth Walker. I think he's a good player. But James Cook lands in the absolute best possible situation you could for a running back, right? Extremely high-powered offense that throws the ball a lot. We know that James Cook was one of the most experienced and decorated receiving type backs in this class. Has the NFL bloodlines with being Dalvin's brother. I really like James Cook's ceiling in this offense. So I think that Kenneth Walker probably, and he'll come off the board soon, has the better floor, maybe the better median outcome, but I love the ceiling potential for James Cook. The Bills have telegraphed to us for months that they do not trust Devin Singletary to be a full-time workhorse in their offense.
Yeah. I'm going to be a little bit of a slave to draft capital again here, because this is a player that I'm not very high on, or at least I wasn't very high on him before the draft, and that's Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. Big wide receivers that play small scare me, and he did not dominate in contested 50-50 situations in the FCS. And I feel like that might frustrate Aaron Rodgers. But I also think that Aaron Rodgers might have gone to management and been like, hey, we missed out on receivers in the first round with our 2 first-round picks. We need to get another guy. And Christian Watson has a chance, and they wound up trading up for him, giving up 2 seconds to get Christian Watson in the top 35. I hated that trade for the Packers, by the way. That was an awesome trade for the Vikings. But Christian Watson, I mean, right now the number 1 receiver in Green Bay is Allen Lazard. Christian Watson has a chance to be the number 1 receiver for Aaron Rodgers, who just signed a long-term contract in Green Bay. So I think this is a boom bust pick, but I think the potential for it to boom is just too strong for me to pass.
Yeah, I like that, Silva. I mean, absolute stud athlete who gets better draft capital than we expected, and he's in a landing spot that's going to give him immediate volume. So I can totally see that. I'm surprised that I'm going to be, I mean, what pick are we at now? Pick 12?
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to see many rookie drafts where Kenneth Walker makes it to pick 12. I'm not a fan of Kenneth Walker in general in a vacuum. The combination of his lack of receiving chops with competition at a running back position for an organization that seems to be going the wrong way in the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm super concerned. If I had this pick and somebody else wanted Kenneth Walker, I would love to trade it to them and trade down. But I do think this is probably about the latest that Walker should go.
Yeah, the thing with Walker, too, that's tough is that, in the pre-draft process, one of our biggest concerns was that he didn't have a lot of receiving experience at Michigan State. Well, now he goes to, the team that wants to establish it the most. I would have loved to have seen him go to a team that was going to maybe throw the ball a little bit where he'd get some of that receiving upside. But, yeah, I think he's a tough one to rank this year, but certainly, like you said, a first-round player. I think this is where things can get a little weird. There's a lot of directions that we can go. I'm just going to go right now with one of my favorites, which is David Bell. I know he's a 3rd-round player, but the numbers on him are just incredible. Extremely, extremely productive. Every team in the Big Ten knew that this guy was getting the ball every play, and they still couldn't stop him. Played with Rondale Moore, who went in the 2nd round last year. Bell was just continued to mash these teams. And I know that he ran the 4.7. I know that the athleticism maybe isn't what we want, but, Bell is just a straight up football player. A guy who will separate. He can make plays. Some of the top comps in our stuff were guys like Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, guys like that. And I see Bell as like a 1-for-1 replacement for what Jarvis Landry maybe could have done in this Cleveland Browns offense. So I think the immediate opportunity is going to be there. And I think long-term, he could end up being one of the most productive players in this class.
All right. Yeah, it's wide open at this point. I'm just going to take Malik Willis. And obviously, the NFL was nowhere near as high on Malik Willis as was Draft Twitter and the mainstream draft media. But I think that there's a good chance that Ryan Tannehill is playing his last year in Tennessee. Malik Willis upside from the dual threat perspective is just too much for me to pass in the Dynasty Superflex. And so I'm gonna pull the trigger here on Malik Willis.
Yeah, I think this is about the time to start taking a chance on the quarterbacks. I'm going to piggyback Silva's pick and go with Desmond Ridder, who went before Malik Willis in the draft, about 12 picks earlier. He goes to Atlanta. Willis obviously has the elite ceiling, right? I mean, if Willis turns out, you just hit absolute gold in Superflex because his rushing at the position is going to make him a top 5 player. Ridder, there's definitely some concerns. He's very athletic, ran a 4.5 240. We want him to run a little bit more at the pro level than he did in college, but I do like the fact that he was QB2 off the board, and he goes to a team that, they've got Marcus Mariota. If Ritter takes over this season and you've drafted him in the second round of Superflex, rookie draft, you're going to be able to flip him for more almost immediately, as long as he's not god awful next season. So I think this is the time to take the quarterbacks where the reward is well worth the risk. But I know there's still a few more wide receivers that are interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Ritter's basically like the Davis Mills argument, right? Like if he gets on the field, all of a sudden it's just instant profit. That's kind of where we are with Mills. I think there's one more receiver that I really like from a ceiling perspective, and that's George Pickens. Everything that you read leading up to the draft basically said, like, if it wasn't for the injury, if it wasn't for maybe some character concerns that teams had, like, this guy could have been the first receiver off the board. Like, he could have been a first round pick easily. Extremely productive as a true freshman at Georgia. I know that Georgia is not a prolific passing game, and that maybe limited some of the raw numbers, but from a market share perspective, he was excellent right away. Followed that up with a decent year in year two. Again, battled some injury, and then his junior year is basically a throwaway after facing a serious injury in the spring. So there's definitely a lot of variance here with Pickens. We aren't positive exactly what we're going to get, but again, these Steeler guys, like the Steelers, we know draft receivers very, very well. They know how to find talent on day two, especially. And if you are worried about maybe some of those character or off-field type stuff, Pittsburgh's the place to go. Like, they're one of the most stable organizations, as I said earlier, with the pick.
So it goes to Silva. This is going to be pick 17, so the 5th pick of second round in the mock draft.
Yeah, and there's no way I could pass on the motherfucking Mackey Award winner here. Trey McBride. Zach Ertz, I know he wound up catching a bunch of balls last year out of opportunity, but he's on his last legs, and the draft capital here is strong. Trey McBride, the number 55 overall pick, pairing him up in a Kyler Murray offense that has a chance to be, explosive for years to come. I think he offers enough upside. He caught 90 balls last year. He can block. I think he can be an every down tight end in the NFL. And I don't think the Cardinals would have drafted him if they didn't agree with that sentiment. So Trey McBride of the Cardinals, really like this one.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot there. I was going to go McBride if you had let him fall any further. I'm going to go. I asked Amico when we did our wide receiver prospect podcast, which wide receiver, if they surprise you with draft capital, would you get, pretty excited about? And you gave me Alec Pierce, who to me has a little bit of Christian Watson in the fact that the draft capital was better than expected. And we've got an athlete, a dude who ran a 4.4 140 at 6'3", 208. So I'm going to play the upside here. You don't get the quarterback talent that Watson got. You don't get the opportunity in terms of competition because you've got Michael Pittman there, but he can, etch out that wide receiver 2 role over time. So I'm going to take a chance on Alec Pierce here. It was kind of between him and John Mechie for me at this pick.
Definitely like it. I'm going to go back to running back. I'm going to go with another day 2 running back selection, a guy that we liked a lot that we weren't sure was going to get the draft capital, and that's Rashad White. Prolific receiving ability at Arizona State, was a transfer there. And this is the kind of running back that we like, right? It's similar to the James Cook selection, a guy that we know can catch passes. He was efficient as a runner with his opportunities, so that could carry over to the NFL. And the Bucs, again, one of the best offenses in the league. Now, the big hang up here, of course, is that Leonard Fournette was just given an extension by Tampa Bay. And he just went through this kind of with Keyshawn Vaughn, where they drafted a running back in the 3rd round, and he just died on the field for us. Like, just never even got an opportunity to play. So there's definitely some risk, some tail risk there with White. But, Fournette, I feel like 2 years ago, people thought that he was dust. So, there's no guarantee that he's going to be on the field and be that workhorse back the rest of the way going forward. So I like White. I think he's a good upside play. I think the talent is there.
Yep. And so, Amico, you'll be betting that to dust, Leonard Fournette shall return. I'm going to stay at running back here. And I'm a little excited about this because I just bet this dude to win Offensive Rookie of the Year at 50-1, and that is Dameon Pierce.
Let's go.
Of the Texans, out of Florida. He was a committee back throughout his career, but when he was on the field, he broke tackles and he caught passes, and he's 224 pounds. And I think that he has a chance to be the day one starting running back for the Texans. I mean, not a difficult depth chart to climb. We get some progression out of Davis Mills. We take some steps forward offensively, and I think this dude has a legit chance to be an every down feature back, going with the upside, Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, I like that, especially if you're in need of immediate RB help. There's not a ton of guys that are going to give you help out of the gate in this draft class, and he's one of them who could, because there's just like no competition there. I'm really torn here. I feel like those picks between 9 and 20, they could go in any order, but we've hit on all the same guys, and now we're at the point where another tier starts that's a little bit up in the air. And there's Jelani Woods at tight end if you want to go tight end premium. Matt Corral is interesting at quarterback with Darnold there, but I said I would take John Metsy last round. I was thinking of him. Alabama wide receiver goes 44th overall. Again, we're investing in the Houston Texans offense in back-to-back picks, but I think at this point, there's 2 wide receivers with pretty strong draft capital left on the board, and he's one of them, so I'm going to take him.
I mean, I'm a Mechie fan, so I like it for sure. I'll go back to quarterback. I mean, there's one more day 2 guy that I think we have to give some love to, and that's Matt Corral. You mentioned him, Leone. These quarterbacks didn't go where we thought, right? But at the end of the day, we know that round 2 quarterbacks are extremely rare. Only 8 in the last 10 drafts. If these guys don't go on day 1, they typically wait till round 3. And everyone has eyes towards the 2023 class. So I think it's possible that these guys maybe got pushed down the board a little further than their talent would warrant. And Corral's going to have some opportunity to play. We know that Sam Darnold is not the answer. Carolina was supposedly in talks to acquire Baker Mayfield, throughout the draft, probably, I'm sure, in the days leading up to the draft as well. And they opted to go with Corral instead. So Corral's the guy, by the end of 2022, should probably get a few starts under his belt. Played an RPO offense in college, but we know that he can run, has a quick release, and he's going to have some good weapons to throw to. We love DJ Moore. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I think, for the value that Corral could present as a back end of the second round type pick in these Superflex drafts.
Dude, and if these guys play, like if Corral plays, his value, the second he steps on the field, is something Sean Siegel, I heard him say over the weekend doing, Sean Siegel wrote of his doing some analysis, but like the second he steps on the field, because he runs, he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback. And immediately, like you're going to have a window at some point to, hopefully you hit the upside and you stick with him, but you're going to have a window at which his value is better than what you drafted him at.
Completely agree.
All right. I kind of hate this pick, but I've talked myself into it toward the back end of the second round. I like everything, or at least most of what the Giants did during the draft. This pick was a head scratcher in real life. Wan'Dale Robinson at number 43 overall. He's so small, 5'8", 179, and he's got like the shortest arms you've ever seen. I mean, he might have the shortest arms in the entire NFL. It's like 27-inch arms. But we're sort of banking on, number one, the draft capital, but also the offense he is joining, because Brian Daboll believes in throwing the piss out of the football. And Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, has a chance to step in if they move Kadarius Toney and be like their day one slot receiver. Or maybe they'll play Kadarius Toney on the outside. I mean, they drafted this guy so early. I mean, they have to have big plans for him. Daboll, I think, might envision him as like his next Cole Beasley / Isaiah McKenzie. I don't know. What do you guys think about Wan'Dale Robinson?
I was going to take him here.
Really? Okay.
I thought about taking him even last round. Again, at a certain point, when you're looking at the remaining picks in a rookie draft here, like the draft capital sticks out. And as you mentioned, Silva, we like the Giants and what they're doing overall. So putting a little bit of faith in them. He had a lot of production in college. I know he's a really small wide receiver and there's some concerns there, but Amico had him ranked 30th in Superflex tight end premium prior to the draft. The landing spot and capital are better than expected. So moving him to the back end of the second round, it seems pretty logical to me.
Yeah, there was a ton of concern, I thought, after the combine and the weigh-ins that he would slip into day 3. So to go in the second round was really impressive. And you mentioned the production. I mean, we basically just did this with Rondale Moore, like very, very similar prospect from the size perspective, and but still having like that production and the draft capital. But we're getting like a 6 to 8 pick discount here from where we had to pick Rondale Moore a year ago, and the class isn't as good. So I definitely think the value's there.
It's funny. We took a circuitous route to get there, but in the end, my top 24 are going to be the 24 that were drafted in our mock draft. I'm going to finish it with Jelani Woods, tight end, second tight end off the board, goes to the Colts, pick 73. I just love, I mean, I'm such a sucker for stashing the tight end athletes and hoping they work out eventually. So, real good size, good speed for his size. And I'm going to take a bet on that. Just keep in mind, whenever you're betting on these tight ends, it can take some time. I mean, we're seeing Albert O this year. If you held on to him, you're super happy. But it took, he was kind of useless there for a while because these guys aren't going to see, big shares right out of the gate. Okay, that's the first 2 rounds. I'll throw it to each of you to give a comment on any players that didn't get drafted that you like as deep sleepers or anything that just like really surprised you in the mock draft. So King Evan Silva, I'll let you go first here.
I guess it would be Jalen Tolbert, who was drafted 88th overall by Dallas. And I think that there's pretty good opportunity in Dallas, and you're investing in, a proven explosive offense. So you got the opportunity, pretty good draft capital, and upside just based on the landing spot.
Amico, any surprises from our mock draft or anybody that didn't get drafted that you've got your eye on late in rookie drafts?
Yeah, no surprises, but there's 2 guys that I really like that I think you can get in the 3rd round of your drafts that have some ceiling. First of all, Tyquan Thornton, 50th pick overall for New England. And I know that like it's so easy to dunk on the Patriots, right? Like they drafted Cole Strange in round 1. Like they drafted this guy Thornton that no one was really expecting on day 2
as well. Like
2 running backs, but 50th overall, sub 4.3 speed. Like I think for the I think the value is going to be there. Like this is a guy who's going to go so overlooked in drafts. Some of our comp stuff still really likes him with the draft capital boost. Like we were expecting to go on day 3. So like completely buried in our pre-draft rankings, but 50th overall, that presents a little bit better of a ceiling. Like his ceiling is going to be closer to some of these other guys that we already drafted. So I like Thornton. And another guy that I like who's a day 3 real life pick, but goes to a good spot is Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, goes to the Packers. Again, like kind of a similar prospect, honestly, to Christian Watson. Like both of these guys were comped from the scouts to be like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who that the Packers are trying to replace. So, there's a chance, like we see this every year, where teams draft 2 or 3 guys in the same position, and it's not the guy who was drafted first that ends up being the better player. So I think that Doubs is like a little bit of an arbitrage play on Watson. Certainly there's reasons for him going later. Like he's drafted on day 3. We don't get a ton of hits from there, but Doubs had early career production at Nevada, and I think that he's probably worth a gamble.
All right, this was fun, guys. I know rookie drafts this year aren't as loaded as last year, but the added uncertainty is going to make them a lot more fun. They can go all over the place. So make sure you're following Evan and Amico over at Establish the Run. Amico will have his Dynasty rankings updated over this week, and you can check those out. I'm also hosting the Establish the Edge podcast, which make sure you like, review on iTunes, helps us a lot. Same if you're listening to or watching this on the Established Run YouTube channel, like, subscribe us, and we'll have a lot of content this week evaluating what happened in the NFL draft. Monday, I've got Jack Miller and Mark Dinkenbring to go over our thoughts on the NFL draft for Underdog and what that's going to do for the best ball tournaments this season. And over the week, I'm also going to put out another podcast somewhat similar to this mock draft, but that's like pins down a little bit more what your strategy should be, where you want to move around in drafts based on your need and what kind of trade value you can eke out. So make sure you're following us, Establish the Edge and Establish the Run. Thank you for tuning in, everybody.